My name is Ruby Washington. At 82 years young, I stepped onto the Family Feud stage in Atlanta on September 8, 2023. The bright lights hit me first. They were warm, almost too warm, but I didn't mind. I leaned slightly on my cane, the one my grandmother carved by hand more than a century ago, and I let the weight of the moment sink in. Beside me stood my family, 4 generations of Washington women. My daughter Patricia, my granddaughter Sarah, my great-granddaughter Zoe, and my niece Lillian. 5 women, 5 lives, 1 bloodline. From 82 years down to 19, that alone felt like a victory. I could hear the buzz of the audience. People chatting, laughing, waiting for the show to begin. Their voices blended into a low hum that rolled through the studio. Some were curious about us. Some looked at me and smiled politely, the way strangers often smile at older folks, gentle but with a touch of doubt. They wondered if I was really here to play or just to stand, smile, and clap. But I wasn't nervous. Not one bit. I had been preparing for this moment for over a decade. Nobody knew that. Not my daughter, not my granddaughter, not even Zoe, who spent the most time with me. When Steve Harvey finally turned toward us, I felt his eyes rest on me first. He saw the gray curls, the cane, the deep lines etched by 8 decades of living. He walked closer, holding his microphone with that confident stride he's known for, and said, "Well now, who do we have here?" I straightened my back, smiled, and answered, "Mr. Steve, my name's Ruby Washington. I'm 82 years young, and I've been watching your show since the day you started hosting." The crowd let out a cheer. Steve grinned. 82? You don't look a day over 60. I chuckled, shaking my head. "Mr. Steve, I told my grandbabies I'd show them how it's done." They didn't believe me. "But I'm here to prove it," the audience laughed. Some clapped. They thought I was just a playful old lady trying to have her moment under the lights. I could see it in their faces. I knew what they were thinking. 82 with a cane? She'll clap, maybe toss out a funny answer or two, but she won't keep up with the game. But I had a secret. For more than 15 years, Family Feud had been my private classroom. I studied it like a scholar. I watched every question, every answer, every reaction. I filled notebooks with patterns. I tracked which answers showed up the most. I watched how different generations responded. I built a mental library of human nature, and tonight, I was ready to use it. As the first round began, I let my family take the lead. Patricia was quick on the buzzer. Sarah threw in clever answers. Lillian was calm and steady. Zoe was nervous but determined. I clapped for them, smiled at them, gave them nods of encouragement. To the audience, I looked like the sweet matriarch, proud of her girls. But inside, I was waiting for my moment. The opening round came fast. Steve read the question, and Patricia hit the buzzer before I even raised my hand. Her answer landed on the board, and our family erupted with cheers. Sarah followed up, her voice trembling but sure, and she nailed another spot. Lillian calmly offered hers, and Zoe hesitated but managed to score a point too. When it came to me, I gave a simple answer. Nothing flashy, nothing dramatic. It landed low on the board, but it counted. The audience clapped politely. My girls patted my shoulder. "Good job, Grandma," Sarah whispered, as if she were talking to a child who'd remembered a nursery rhyme. I smiled. I didn't mind. Let them underestimate me. The second round came, then the third. Each time, my girls buzzed in quicker than I did. I let them. They were young, sharp, eager to prove themselves. I didn't need to take the spotlight yet. My role was to stay steady, encourage them, and study the rhythm of the room. I could feel the energy of the crowd rise and fall with each answer. Some questions got laughs. Others got groans. Steve played with the audience, teasing families when they stumbled. He had a way of turning even a wrong answer into entertainment. I watched him carefully. He liked me already. I could see it in his eyes. He respected older folks, especially when they showed spirit. By the third round, we were ahead, but not by much. Our opponents were strong, a family from Texas with quick reflexes and loud voices. They shouted answers like they were at a football game. The crowd loved their energy, but then came the fourth round. The question was simple. Name something people collect. Both families leaned in, hands hovering over the buzzers. Steve glanced at each side, then read it again, slower, building suspense. My heart beat steady. I knew this one. Not because I'd memorized past questions, but because I'd lived long enough to see what people truly hold on to. The buzzer rang. My hand, cane and all, had moved faster than anyone expected. I could see the surprise on Patricia's face, on Sarah's, on Zoe's. Even Steve raised his eyebrows. "All right now," he said, pointing at me. "Miss Ruby's in the game. Name something people collect." Without hesitation, I said, "Memories." The crowd fell silent for a moment. Steve tilted his head, repeating my word. "Memories." He turned to the board. No answer appeared. The opposing family clapped, trying to hide their relief. But Steve looked back at me, shaking his head with a smile. "Miss Ruby, that's not up there, but let me tell you, that was beautiful. That's wisdom right there." I leaned slightly on my cane, looked him in the eye, and said, "Mr. Steve, I haven't just lived a full life. I've been paying attention the whole time." The audience laughed, but not mockingly. It was a warm laugh, the kind you hear when truth hits in an unexpected way. Steve chuckled, nodding. "I believe you, Ruby. I really do." The round went to the other family, but it didn't matter to me. That moment was the spark. My girls looked at me differently after that. Zoe's eyes were wide, her mouth slightly open. Sarah whispered, "Grandma," but she didn't finish her sentence. She didn't have to. For the first time, they realized I wasn't here just to cheer them on. I was here to play. The next round began with a different kind of energy. My family glanced at me more often now. Patricia, usually the rock of our team, seemed shaken by how quickly I had buzzed in. Sarah leaned in closer whenever Steve read a question, as if waiting for me to make another move. Zoe kept sneaking looks at me, her eyebrows furrowed like she was trying to solve a riddle she'd never known existed. The question this time was, name something you'd find in a hospital. Sarah buzzed in. "Doctors!" she shouted. "Number one answer." The crowd clapped. She beamed, proud and relieved. Patricia added nurses. Another hit. Lillian said patience, and it scored too. Zoe hesitated, biting her lip before saying medicine. It landed low on the board, but it counted. Then it was my turn. I adjusted my glasses and said, "Hope." The audience made a sound I'll never forget, a mix of laughter, surprise, and soft murmurs. The board didn't light up, but Steve stopped. He looked at me the way only he can, with that mix of humor and seriousness. "Miss Ruby," he said, "that right there belongs on the board, even if it ain't." I smiled. "Mr. Steve, it's in every hospital I've ever been in. Might not be in the drawer, but it's in the room." The crowd clapped, some even stood. My family smiled awkwardly, half proud, half worried I wasn't playing the game right. But inside, I knew what I was doing. My answers weren't just guesses. They were truths, the kind of truths that stay in people's minds, even if they don't light up the scoreboard. As the game went on, I kept giving my quiet answers. Sometimes they scored, sometimes they didn't, but every time they made people think. The audience began to lean in when it was my turn. Steve teased me gently, calling me the poet of Family Feud. I didn't mind. I liked it. When we won another round, Patricia hugged me tight. "Mama," she whispered, "you're surprising me tonight." I just patted her back. "Baby, I told you. I've been ready for this." The score was close now. Both families had chances. The lights felt hotter, the tension sharper. My girls were sweating, whispering strategies, bouncing nervously on their feet. I stayed calm. 8 decades of life had taught me not to panic when stakes were high. Then Steve called for fast money. My heart didn't race. It steadied. I had waited for this moment for 15 years. My daughter Patricia was chosen to go first. She took a deep breath, straightened her back, and stepped forward. The countdown began, and she answered quickly, though I could hear the nervous tremor in her voice. Doctors, forks, alarm clocks, pacing, post office. Her answers were good, solid, safe. When her score came up, 164 points, the crowd clapped loud. Steve praised her. That left me needing 36 points. Some in the audience gasped when my family pointed at me instead of Zoe. I could see the doubt ripple across their faces. An 82-year-old woman, cane in hand, standing under the hottest lights of the show, asked to carry the final weight. But this was the moment I had prepared for. I adjusted my glasses, gripped my cane, walked forward, and looked Steve Harvey dead in the eye. "Mr. Steve," I said softly, but steady, "I've been ready for this longer than you might think." The crowd went silent, and then the clock began. The studio lights dimmed just a touch. The music shifted into that tense rhythm every Family Feud fan knows. I could feel the weight of hundreds of eyes on me, maybe thousands if you count the cameras. My family huddled together behind me, their whispers trailing off into silence. Patricia clutched her hands to her chest. Zoe held onto Sarah's arm. Steve Harvey leaned toward me, microphone in hand. His eyes studied me carefully, curious, almost protective. He'd seen nervous contestants, confident ones, even overconfident ones. But I think he sensed something different in me. Calm. "You ready, Miss Ruby?" he asked. I gave a small nod. "Born ready." The crowd chuckled lightly. The clock started. "Name a job that requires a uniform." "Police officer," I said, my voice firm. "Name something in a kitchen junk drawer." "Rubber bands." Name a reason someone's late for work. "Traffic." "Jam." Name something people do when they can't. "Sleep." Count sheep. Name a place you might see a long line. "The bank." I answered each one without hesitation, without pause. The words rolled out steady, sharp, like pages I had memorized long ago. Steve barely had time to move to the next question before my reply came. When the buzzer sounded, the crowd reacted differently than usual. Instead of a sigh of relief that time had run out, there was a ripple of surprise. Murmurs. I could feel it. People were realizing I hadn't stumbled, hadn't hesitated, hadn't wasted a single second. Steve stared at me. Then he blinked slowly and smiled. "Well, Ruby, you sure didn't come to play around?" The audience laughed, but it was nervous laughter, curious laughter. They wanted to know what had just happened. "All right now," Steve said, walking over to the board. "Let's see how Miss Ruby did." The first category lit up. Police officer. Number 1 answer. The crowd cheered. The second. Rubber bands. Points shot up high. The third. Traffic jam? Another big score. The fourth. Count sheep. Number 1 again. The fifth. The bank. More points. With each ding of the board, the studio grew louder. My family screamed. Patricia's hands covered her mouth. Sarah was crying. Zoe had her hands in the air, disbelief painted across her face. Then Steve stopped. He looked at the scoreboard, then back at me, then back at the scoreboard again. He stepped closer, his voice dropping into that deep, serious tone he uses when something extraordinary happens. "Grandmother Ruby," he said slowly, "you just scored 200 points in fast money." The crowd exploded. People gasped. Some stood clapping wildly. Others shouted. My family rushed toward me, hugging, crying, lifting their hands to the ceiling. But Steve wasn't finished. He turned to the camera, then back to the audience. "In 47 years of Family Feud, only 7 people have ever gotten a perfect 200 points. And now Ruby Washington at 82 years old. You're the 8th. And let me tell you something else. At 82, you're older than all the others combined." The ovation was deafening. My cane tapped softly against the stage as I shifted my weight. But inside, I was as steady as I'd ever been. I didn't shout. I didn't wave. I simply folded my hands over my cane, lifted my chin, and let the roar of the crowd wash over me. I had waited 15 years for this moment. And I had met it head on. The studio was electric. The crowd was still on its feet, clapping and shouting my name. My family clung to me, their voices breaking with joy. Patricia kept whispering, "Mama, you did it. You really did it!" Sarah sobbed openly, her tears running down her cheeks as she hugged my arm. Zoe's face was a mix of pride and disbelief. She couldn't stop shaking her head, her mouth wide open like she was stuck in awe. Steve Harvey stood a few feet away, grinning but also stunned. He looked at me as if he was seeing me for the first time. Slowly, he walked over and leaned on his microphone stand. "Miss Ruby," he said, his voice serious. "In all my years of hosting this show, I've seen some things. I've seen surprises, I've seen comebacks, I've seen miracles. But I ain't never seen what you just did," the audience roared again. Then from backstage, a woman in a blazer stepped out. Steve introduced her as Dr. Jennifer Martinez, the show's statistician. She held a clipboard and looked almost as shocked as everyone else. "Ladies and gentlemen," she announced, her voice carrying over the crowd. The odds of someone Ruby's age achieving a perfect 200 in fast money are astronomical. "Based on our data, the chance is roughly 1 in 300,000. Gasps swept through the audience. Someone shouted, "That's impossible!" Another yelled, "She's a legend!" But I knew the truth. It wasn't impossible. It was prepared. Steve turned back to me. "Miss Ruby, was this just luck?" I adjusted my glasses and shook my head slowly. "No, Mr. Steve, this was no accident. For 15 years, I've been studying this show like it was my job. I filled notebooks with questions and answers, with patterns and possibilities. I didn't guess tonight. I chose. Because I've been paying attention, not just to this game, but to people." The crowd erupted again, louder than before. I could see my family's faces shift as they processed my words. Patricia pressed her hands to her mouth, tears streaming. Sarah whispered, "You studied all this time?" Zoe's eyes grew wide as she said, "Grandma, all those notebooks. I thought you were just keeping score." I nodded at her gently. "No, baby. I was building a map of how people think, what they say, how they act. 15 years of watching this show, but 82 years of watching people." Steve threw his head back and laughed, clapping his hands. "Lord have mercy. This woman didn't just win Family Feud, she mastered it." The ovation swelled again. The cameras zoomed in on my face, then on my cane. The carved wood gleamed under the studio lights. To most, it was just a cane. To me, it was a symbol of generations. My grandmother gave it to me. Tonight, it held me steady while I made history. I didn't raise it in triumph. I didn't need to. Its presence alone said enough. For the first time in Family Feud history, the standing ovation didn't die down quickly. It stretched on, longer than any before it. The audience kept clapping, kept shouting, kept celebrating. Some cried. Some smiled. Some just shook their heads in disbelief. I stood calmly in the center of it all. My hands folded over my cane. My chin lifted. My heart steady. I had proven to my family, to the world, and maybe even to myself, that age doesn't weaken you. It sharpens you. The cameras stopped rolling, but the world had already taken notice. Backstage, my family crowded around me, still clinging, laughing, crying, shaking their heads in disbelief. Zoe couldn't stop whispering, "Grandma, how did you do that?" I smiled softly and said, "I've lived 82 years, baby. I've been watching people all that time. Family Feud is just a game, but people? They're predictable when you pay attention." Patricia held my hands tightly. "Mama, I can't believe I underestimated you." "You didn't underestimate me," I said, shaking my head. "You just hadn't seen my method yet." Word of my perfect score spread almost instantly. Clips from the show went viral online, millions of views in hours. News outlets picked up the story. People shared it on social media under Ruby Wisdom. They weren't just amazed that an 82-year-old scored 200 points. They were inspired that someone older could do something seemingly impossible with patience, observation, and strategy. The Family Feud producers reached out to me, asking if I would return as a consultant, maybe even write a guide for future contestants. A professor from the University of Georgia called, wanting to study my methods for psychology classes. "You've proven something remarkable," he said. "That age doesn't limit capability, it transforms it." Even my own family began to see me differently. Sarah said she finally understood that wisdom isn't just knowledge, it's insight born from experience. Zoe, who had been a casual fan of the show, decided to switch her college major to gerontology. "I want to understand what you understand, Grandma," she told me. "How being older makes you differently capable." I realized then that my victory wasn't just about the money, the applause, or even the perfect score. It was about showing my family and everyone watching that life experience counts. It shapes how you see the world, how you predict behavior, how you succeed where others think you can't. And yes, I kept my cane close by, but it wasn't just for support anymore. It was a symbol of generations, the past that shaped me, the present that I owned, and the future I could influence. 2 weeks later, I returned to the show, not as a contestant this time, but to talk to Steve about human behavior, about patterns, about strategy. I told him, "Young people know what's trendy. I know what's true." He laughed, shaking his head, clearly impressed. The show had changed my life. But more importantly, it had changed the way my family and the world looked at age, wisdom, and capability. People began to reach out, sharing their own stories of older family members who had quietly mastered something amazing. My story became a beacon. Impossible doesn't mean unachievable. Even now, I watch Family Feud every day. My notebooks are still with me, filled with observations, patterns, and ideas. I keep learning because life doesn't stop teaching when you get older. And Zoe? She studies right alongside me, learning that being 82 isn't about slowing down. It's about seeing farther. My win wasn't just a perfect score on a game show. It was proof that wisdom, experience, and a lifetime of attention can make the improbable inevitable. After the excitement faded, after the camera stopped rolling and the lights dimmed, I sat quietly in my living room with my family. The television replayed my perfect score, over and over. Zoe leaned against me, still wide-eyed. "Grandma, you're incredible," she whispered. I took her hand gently. "Baby, this isn't about being incredible. It's about paying attention, learning from life, and using what you know." Patricia poured tea for all of us, her hands trembling slightly. "Mama, you've always been like this. But I didn't realize how much you'd been preparing all these years." "It's not preparation in the way you think," I said. "It's observing life. Every person I've met, every mistake, every joy, it all teaches you something." That's how I knew how to answer those questions tonight. Sarah looked at me, tears still in her eyes. "So all those notebooks, they weren't just about Family Feud?" I shook my head, smiling. "No, sweetheart. They were about understanding people, predicting how they think, noticing patterns. Family Feud is just a mirror of life." Zoe's eyes brightened. "So getting older? It doesn't mean you can't achieve. It means you see things differently," I nodded. "Exactly. Being older isn't a limit. It's a lens. It teaches you patience, focus, and perspective. It makes your judgments sharper, your predictions wiser. It's about being differently capable, not less capable. For me, the win wasn't the $20,000 prize, though that was nice. It wasn't even the viral attention, though that surprised me. It was the proof, the undeniable demonstration that age doesn't dim the mind. It refines it. That wisdom isn't something that can be rushed, bought, or faked. It's earned day by day, moment by moment, observation by observation. And the best part? I got to share it with my family. Patricia, Sarah, Zoe, and Lillian, they saw firsthand that a lifetime of attention and care produces results that no one can anticipate. Zoe now studies aging and human behavior. Sarah plans to use what she learned about observation and patience in her career. Patricia tells everyone she knows that her mother is unstoppable, and I keep watching, learning, and living. Some nights I sit with my cane beside me, the notebook open, and reflect. I think of all the years, the small victories and losses that shaped me. I think of my grandmother who carved that cane, teaching me silently that strength isn't always loud. I think of every child I've watched grow, every friend I've laughed with, every stranger I've observed. All those small moments taught me how to read people, how to understand patterns, and yes, how to conquer a game show in my 80s. I realized that this story, my story, isn't just about me. It's about showing the world that age transforms capability. It's about proving that the fire inside us doesn't fade with time. It shifts, strengthens, and illuminates differently. My family saw it. The audience saw it. The world saw it. And for anyone watching, anyone doubting themselves or someone they love, I want you to remember this. Experience is power. Age is wisdom. And the spark you think has faded? It hasn't gone anywhere. It's waiting for the right moment to shine.